Unlike other ancient civilizations, Carthage was a melting pot culture that welcomed migrants, new ideas, and innovation, creating an adaptable society that still affects us today. Most people who know about Carthage remember them as Rome's enemy during the Punic Wars, a series of three conflicts that ended in Carthage's destruction and jump-started Rome's rise as an international superpower. However, Carthage was more than just one of Rome's early enemies. It was home to an influential and thriving culture. At their peak, the Carthaginian Empire encompassed North Africa and stretched into southern Spain. They had control of several islands in the Mediterranean and were a powerful trading force. Although Rome did their best to annihilate Carthage during the Punic Wars, its stories continue to reach across time, showing us a people who were strong enough to take on the Roman Empire. Great leaders led these people and shaped Carthage throughout its history. Here are 5 of the most notable rulers of Carthaginian society. Number 1. Queen Dido. Queen Dido is one of the most notable early rulers in Carthaginian history, but historians do not know much about her because much of her story has passed into legend. In general, we do not have Carthaginian accounts from their perspective. All their documents have been lost, so the only records we have are from the ancient Greeks and Romans. These accounts are potentially problematic because both civilizations were enemies of Carthage at some point in history. However, even though Queen Dido's story has some fantastical elements, historians have found archaeological evidence that aligns with some parts of it, suggesting that Queen Dido was likely a real person. Long before the founding of Carthage, the Phoenicians were developing a solid trade network, beginning as early as 1500 BCE. Although they never created an empire, they settled several strong cities, including Tyre. Tyre quickly became the leading Phoenician city-state, and they grew so powerful that they started towns and colonies around the Mediterranean. One of the last cities they founded was Qart-Hadasht, Phoenician for new city. This settlement would eventually become Carthage. According to the stories, Carthage was established around 814 BCE by Dido. She was from Tyre and was the sister of King Pygmalion, who hurt her deeply. The legends disagree about precisely what he did, but some say that King Pygmalion killed Dido's husband to cheat her out of a shared rule. Whatever he did, Dido left Tyre and sailed west. At this point, the stories begin to take on mythical elements. Dido managed to collect a large following on her way, and when they finally landed in North Africa, the Berbers and the people of the city-state Utica welcomed her. Of course, they refused to freely give her as much land as she wanted, but the king allowed them to have the ground that a single ox hide could cover. In response, Dido cut the ox hide into strips and used it to surround the hill that eventually became Carthage's citadel, establishing the city in an excellent position for trade and growth. Historians don't believe this myth is entirely factual. Still, they have confirmed that there was a Phoenician settlement at Carthage in the latter half of the 9th century BCE, around the same time ancient historians date Dido's arrival. They also discovered a golden locket containing an inscription about King Pygmalion. In addition, the ancient Carthaginians had religious traditions that included sending offerings to Tyre and the Berber people nearby. All of this suggests that there is some truth in Dido's story, making her one of the most notable Carthaginian rulers. Number 2. Mago I. Carthaginian society was not set up as a monarchy, so they do not have a history of great kings who shaped their development. One of the great dynasties was the Magonid dynasty, which successfully looked after the budding empire's interests beginning in the 6th century BCE. These interests included gaining and maintaining control over crucial trade areas such as Libya, Sardinia, and Sicily. One of the Magonid leaders was Mago I, a victorious Carthaginian general. During his time, Carthage changed how it structured its army. Instead of relying upon citizens or conscription, Carthage utilized mercenaries because their population was too small to support long campaigns while maintaining strong trade practices. Mago I was the first of the Magonid leaders, and he focused on strengthening Carthage's position in the Mediterranean. Reigning from 550 to 530 BCE, one of Mago I's most significant accomplishments was establishing a treaty with the Etruscans that lasted until the Romans disposed of the last Etruscan king. The two ancient cultures worked together to fight the Greeks and take various islands in the Mediterranean for Carthage, including Sardinia. By the end of his rule, Carthage was one of the most robust Phoenician colonies in the western Mediterranean. Number 3. Hanno the Great. Carthage dealt with many rebellions throughout its history, which impacted its politics and led to frequent changes in leadership. By the end of the 370s BCE, Hanno had taken control of the political world in Carthage, and he was so powerful that he was sometimes called Hanno the Great. As a great military commander, Hanno won a significant naval battle with the Greeks for control of Sicily. He also helped abolish rebellions in Syracuse, further bolstering his political power. He retained that power for about 20 years, and historians believe he might have been one of the wealthiest men in Carthage during that time. Although Hanno gained great power during the rebellions in Syracuse, he was soon too involved in Carthage's politics to take much interest in Syracuse or other outside interests. In Carthage, it was common for leaders to be opposed by others of almost equal political power. For Hanno, his political rival was Sunayatus, whom he finally had executed on accusations of treason. However, this did not quell all opposition, and Hanno grew increasingly power-hungry. By 350 BCE, Hanno planned a coup to place him in charge of Carthage, but his plan to kill many state officials was discovered and stopped before he could execute it. Hanno took his last stand at his country estate before being captured, tortured, and executed for treason. His bid for power makes Hanno the Great notable, even if he was not one of Carthage's most beneficial leaders. Number 4. Hamilcar Barca. Carthage held firm in its multiple wars with the Greeks over territory in the Mediterranean, but the Roman Empire proved to be an even more formidable opponent. During the First Punic War, Carthage employed mercenaries and Berber soldiers, but it still suffered startling losses that shook the empire. When the war ended in 241 BCE, the soldiers returned to Carthage and demanded their payments. When Carthage attempted to lower their wages, the soldiers went to Tunis and captured the city. They negotiated for better pay. However, the mercenaries held a coup before they could enjoy their victory and started the Mercenary War. This war spread across Africa as various people and cities rebelled against the Carthaginian Empire. Carthage had to act quickly to save themselves, so they called upon Hamilcar Barca. Hamilcar had served during the First Punic War over some mercenaries and Berbers, but Carthaginian leadership dismissed him after the war. With the mercenaries spreading rebellion, Carthage again needed Hamilcar and his excellent military skills to restore order. He used impressive tactics with few resources to regain control of areas in North Africa. Hamilcar even convinced the Numidian cavalry and several cities to switch sides to strengthen his army. However, by 239 BCE, the mercenary war was becoming increasingly violent, and Hamilcar realized that the only way he could win was by combining forces with Hanno, another prominent military leader. Although neither wanted to work with each other, they did, although they disagreed. It took several more years before Hamilcar could crush the rebellion completely, but he consistently showed his ability to fight and win battles against a significantly larger force than his own. He managed to take out many of the rebellious mercenaries by trapping them in a canyon and starving them until they were too weak to fight back. By the end of the Mercenary War, most of the mercenaries were dead, and Hamilcar Barca became one of the foremost leaders of Carthage. He focused on rebuilding the Carthaginian economy, although Rome did their best to stop that by taking Sardinia and Corsica from Carthage. By 237 BCE, Hamilcar turned his attention to increasing Carthaginian influence in Spain, using both military and diplomatic tactics to expand their territory. Hamilcar went to Spain to conquer more land, bringing his son Hannibal Barca and his son-in-law with him. Hamilcar died in Spain in 229 or 228 BCE in a battle against one of the tribes, leaving the way clear for Hannibal to eventually fill his father's shoes and become one of the greatest Carthaginian terrors with whom the Roman Empire ever had to deal. Number 5. Hannibal Barca. Most people have heard of Hannibal Barca, the famed general who terrorized all of Italy during the Second Punic War. Although he did not take over the Spanish campaign immediately after his father's death, he was in charge by 221 BCE. Hannibal was a gifted military commander, but his success caused the Roman Empire to finally notice the Carthaginian expansion in Spain, which worried them. If Carthage continued to expand, they could take land in Gaul and eventually come to Italy via the north. Rome quickly warned Hannibal not to cross the Tiber River or attack Saguntum, a city with friendly Roman relations. Hannibal refused to be cowed and laid siege to Saguntum in 219 BCE. After Hannibal conquered the city, Rome demanded that Carthage hand him over. When Carthage refused, Rome declared war and started the Second Punic War. Historians believe Hannibal expected war to break out because he was ready by 218 BCE. Instead of waiting for Rome to attack North Africa or Spain, Hannibal marched his army north towards the Alps. Although he did encounter some hostile tribes that cost him time and soldiers, he arrived in northern Italy in November 218 BCE with about 26,000 soldiers. Hannibal began his campaign in Italy, gathering support from the local villages and tribes. He strengthened his forces and supplies, but Hannibal needed more than that to defeat the Roman army. He also needed tactical genius. Hannibal faced the Roman forces several times while in Italy, soundly defeating them each time. After defeating the Roman army at Lake Trasimene, the Romans were terrified that he would march to Rome itself. With around 25,000 Romans dead or captured from this one battle, Hannibal did have a strong hand. However, Hannibal did not lay siege to Rome. Instead, he took his troops to southern Italy, giving them time to recover from the long trek and multiple battles. Historians have criticized this choice for centuries. Even though Hannibal did need to rest his troops, that rest gave Rome time to recover, eventually leading to a Roman victory in the Second Punic War. Hannibal wanted to defeat Rome and believed that Romans would pursue peace eventually, especially if he kept defeating their armies so soundly. Unfortunately for Hannibal, the Romans were not in the habit of losing or asking for peace. The Romans turned their attention to Carthage, attacking it until they finally called Hannibal back, removing Rome's most significant threat from Italy. Rome then quickly finished the war, claiming victory once again. Although Hannibal did not win the Second Punic War, he still demonstrated considerable military skill, proving himself to be one of the most notable leaders in Carthaginian history and one of the greatest military minds in human history. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Carthage, check out our book, Carthage, a captivating guide to the Carthaginian Empire and its conflicts with the ancient Greek city-states and the Roman Republic in the Sicilian Wars and Punic Wars. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.